Hello! Today I wanted to give you a tour of my pen collection. So it's specifically fountain pens, but with a little surprise at the end. So we're going to start with this. These are the pens that I currently have inked. I don't remember the brand. Okay, here's the brand of this pen holder, Delphonics. It's actually not big enough to be closed with all these pens in. So all the pens like fit inside, but when I try to like close it, it just doesn't doesn't close. It's quite far away from the first button. So yeah, it's fine. This mostly stays at home and is all like just curled up like this, and then I lay it down on the end. It works fine. I don't think these are designed for fountain pens because also the flap at the top here just barely covers the top. But yeah, it is what it is, and I'm perfectly happy with it. So these are the 10 pens I currently have inked. We can start over here. These are 3 Platinum Preppies. So this one is a bit of a hybrid. I took a red pen and a green pen and sort of mixed them up. So I have the nib and nib unit grip and such from the red one, and then the rest from the green. And I just syringe fill this cartridge. I haven't made this into an eyedropper pen because that seems very scary to me. It has an O2 nib, which is usually translated to an extra fine, which I find it writes like an extra fine. It's very fine and I really like it. It's smooth enough that I can actually write normally with it, which is rare for extra fine. These two both have O5 nibs, which roughly translates to a medium. There's sort of a juicy medium, considering these are Asian pens. So I would imagine this is closer to a European medium. Yeah, these aren't hybrid at all, but I've used some electrical tape to secure this barrel because it has a crack, just to extend the lifetime of this pen. There is a tendency for barrels cracking, especially when you tighten a little bit too much, which apparently I do. I've also had cracks in the caps and that kind of thing. They're pretty cheap pens, and so I'm not expecting that much of them, but they are great writers and I love writing with them. They are really smooth. Next up we have 3 Lamy Safaris. We have a mint one, I think they call this mint, a white one and a yellow one. I don't actually know if these two are in the standard lineup. I'm pretty sure this was a special edition, but I basically picked these up in shops, so I'm just like, oh, this is a lovely pen, I'll have that one. Instead of like looking on the internet and finding out lots more about these pens. Let's see, this one is a fine nib, and it writes a little bit fat for a fine, I would say. The thing with Lamy is that their tolerances for what they accept for their nibs tend to overlap. So you can have a fat fine that writes fatter than a small medium, if you understand what I mean. Like the ranges overlap, which is quite frustrating. Like, I think, in my opinion, they should have more like stricter tolerances for what is a medium and what is a fine, because the thing is, this is a fine and this is a medium, and they write approximately the same, which is not what you expect when you buy pens with 2 different nibs. Like, it should not be the same writing experience, but there it is. I think the white one has slightly more tipping material, but it doesn't affect the line. So I don't know what they're doing. So this is a fine, this is a medium. and this one is a broad, which is really juicy and really nice. Really fat, too fat sometimes, but generally I really like it. I have sort of a loopy, slightly big handwriting, and so I like the sort of heavier flow of and like fatter line of thicker, like a broader nib. So like a medium or a broad. Now we get to my Jinhao 80s. So I have 4 Jinhao 80s. These are sort of, I don't think I can say knockoff because there are things here that aren't the same as the Lamy 2000, but they definitely look like a Lamy 2000. It's particularly striking with this one, which has the same coloring. But it's a slip cap that only, not a slip cap, what is it? Pop? I don't know. But it only collects to the edge here, so there's nothing, there's no, so in the Lamy 2000 has a couple of sort of ears that keep the cap on. This doesn't have that, so it's smooth all the way around, all the way up, which is perfect for me because I sometimes hold my pen quite high up, and so this is my solution for that. When I need to hold up here, there's nothing sort of in the way. This band is very like at the same level as everything else. And as you can probably see, I don't know if you can, it has a Lamy nib on it. So what I did, so these only come in extra fine and one other, but they're all like pretty fine, and I do not like fine nibs. So what I did is I switched the nibs out with a Lamy nib because the feed is the same, or like basically the same as a Lamy. So you can see like they're very similar, and they're similar enough that you can switch out the nib. Only problem is I had to use a little screwdriver to like loosen the nib because it was like pretty tightly on there. But when I did and I got this on, it writes like a dream. It's slightly wet writer, but that's fine by me. Like it's pretty wet in the beginning when you start writing, and then it sort of slightly dries over time, but I'm fine with this. So we have a white one, a red one, a green one, and a black one. They have, so these 3 have gold hardware, and this one has silver hardware. It's not actual gold and silver, it's just like colored that way. The white one has a 1.1 stub from Lamy that I took from one of my other Lamy pens. The red one has a, oh, here's the problem I have with the red one. Nicely demonstrated. When this arrived, the glue that holds the section on had gone, basically. And so it's just a friction fit, and I just haven't been bothered to fix it. So sometimes the body comes off, but I'm fine. I'm fine with this, so far at least. This one is a broad nib that I bought in a shop, and I needed to adjust it. So I don't know if you can see, I've sort of turned it down because the tines were too far apart for like to give consistent flow. So by pressing the tines, like pressing the nib down this way, the tines are slightly closer and it writes better now. But yeah, it wasn't a great choice of nib. So I may go out and buy another one. They're not very expensive, Lamy nibs. You can get them sort of loose in a shop, generally, several places. This one is a fine nib, the green. It writes a little bit closer to a medium, but I quite like that, so I'm happy. And this one is also a fine. Again, quite a wide line, and I quite enjoy that. So those are the currently inked And now we get to all the ones that I haven't inked in a good while. So I guess from a thing that you can think of with all these pens is that I can hold them pretty far up. It's no problem to hold a Lamy Safari at the very top of the grip, and these preppies can also be held like pretty comfortably, pretty high up. So I have gone for comfort over aesthetics, is what I will say. Though I do quite like the aesthetics of what I have going on with my currently inked, especially with, so these are the latest additions to my collection, and they work pretty well, except this red one that has like a couple of problems. But yeah, it works really well, and the texture is really nice. This is just hard plastic, nothing fancy like the Lamy 2000, and solid, and just a really good pen. So yeah, now on to the ones that I don't have inked, and they're all in this pencil case. I don't have many expensive pens, so they all just live here, rubbing up against each other. So I'll just, I guess, dump them all out and we can talk about them. I'd say I don't have many expensive pens, but some of these are a little bit more expensive, I guess. But they've all been like through quite a lot of wear, and so yeah, I don't care that much. Let's see. We can start off with these two. These are Parker pens. I think they are IMs. They're sort of the cheapest ones that you find that are full metal barrel fountain pens. I don't really like the grip on these because it slopes down, and the nib is tiny. Like the actual size of the nib is tiny, and I don't like that either. The pens are solid though, like the actual bodies and stuff. This one has started leaking, and I just don't find myself wanting to use them. The balance is slightly weird as well, slightly backward balanced, and I want to hold them up here, which is quite uncomfortable because there's a step here. I think you'll see a through line here where lots of these pens have uncomfortable, to me, grips. For other reasons, I guess. So yeah, we can just go straight onto this Pilot Metropolitan. It has a huge step down from the barrel to the grip, and I end up here on the step down, which is very uncomfortable. This nib is amazing. It's really smooth. It writes super smooth. But yeah, I just find myself ending up holding it in a very uncomfortable position, and I don't want to use it. I guess let's look at the shark. I have a shark because I wanted to check out what a shark pen was like. It's slightly weird because the grip section is out here, and the cap only covers the nib. The nib, I gather this comes in two different nib styles. One is hooded like this one, and one is more like a normal nib. This one started leaking pretty quickly after I got it. So it's I think the name is just Jinhao's Shark. Like just Jinhao, the make, and the shark pen. Yeah, it didn't last long. Maybe a couple of months, and that's it. So I haven't used it since because leaking pens is not fun, especially since this cap doesn't really hold anything in, so it would just leak and leak out into my pen case and onto my other pens. So yeah, just not great. I mean, it is very inexpensive as well. So I wasn't expecting a pen that would last a lifetime, but it was a bit of a disappointment when it started leaking that quickly. And then I think we can just I can make a little group here of these pens. These are 3 Chinese retractable pens that I've been given by my very kind pen friend. This one I put, what did I put in it? I put some black ink that was waterproof in it, and it just clogged everything up. The mechanism is quite weird. So the thing is, it's retractable, but it has a cap because it doesn't have any sort of internal mechanism to keep the nib from drying out. And so you take off the cap, you screw off the tip here, and there's a whole like separate inner workings with the nib and the converter. So it's a bit like a ballpoint pen. It has the spring down here over the nib, which means that the spring got full of ink and was kind of an ink reservoir, and the nose cone was full of ink at all times. This is also rusted or like corrosed in some way. The converter is really good. And the nib is tiny. It's so narrow. And this is sort of similar in the other. So let's see, reassemble. So this is similar for the other 2. This one I barely used because it's very much the same type of construction, and I was a little bit scared, but instead of metal, there's plastic here. But yeah, the spring has already started rusting on this one. I think I'd give it like 1 try or something, and now it's rusting. So I haven't used this much. Also, the thing is with this one, you have to hold on the barrel here, and it's a pretty small grip. I know people love, like there are lots of people who love small grips. I generally don't. I prefer a fatter grip. So that's why this hasn't gotten used that much. And then we have this one that did, it did get a little bit of use. It's also the same, no, it's not the same kind of thing. So that you can't really take this pen apart. The nib is sort of stuck in there, and I don't know if you can hear. It sounds frictiony. So this got a fair bit of use. It has a tiny nib again, but here the nib is sort of stuck in here, and you can take out the converter and put it in if you want to. So what happened was really that it started writing badly, and then just the retraction mechanism stopped working very well. So the pen would just retract while I was writing or not come out. Like these, I'm pretty sure are pretty cheap Chinese pens, but yeah, there's a reason that making a retractable fountain pen is difficult, and I think it's exemplified in these. Like, it's not an easy task to make a functioning retractable pen that will work for years, which is why they are generally expensive and not cheap mass manufactured. Let's see. We have another Platinum Preppy. These are the rest of the bits from the other pen. So here I have the green one. This one got a bit of a knock. It fell down on the nib and bent it really badly, and I thought, let me DIY a stub nib. So I took some nail clippers and I just clipped off the tip here. It's really sharp and not very comfortable to write with. It's only smooth in like one certain position, and I can't hold that position forever. I've also had to tape this one because it also has a cracked barrel. So yeah, it isn't getting used anymore because this nib is DIYing stub nibs is tricky when you don't have the, I guess, the things you need to do something like that, like micro mesh. I don't have anything like that. Let's see. This is a bit of a weird one. I got like a friend found an old like set of calligraphy pens. So this is that. It's a manuscript pen that had like, it came with lots of different sections with different nibs. And so I've gone for the only one that I can consistently make right, which is, I think, a fine. I think they just call it a fine, yeah. But it is an oblique nib, which you don't see those very often nowadays. I think this was a set from the 80s. So it's like a stub, but like slanted to one side. It's quite tricky to write with. You need to be careful about your angle and the rotation of your pen. So I need to rotate my pen like to the left to be able to write, because then the whole flat surface is against the paper, which just got fiddly in the end, and the edges are really sharp, and I couldn't be bothered to like keep a consistent angle and that kind of thing. This one is another gift from my wonderful pen pal. It's a Jinhao 82 Mini. So it basically looks like a Sailor pen, but in a mini version. I don't think they currently make a mini. But yeah, it's a bit of a knockoff. Again, Jinhao sadly does a lot of these, but much less expensive. I really like the colors. These are really my colors. But again, with the grip. So this is a screw-on cap, and so you have threads here. And I end up holding the pen on the threads. I've tried this, I've used it for quite a while, and I just end up on the threads, and it's uncomfortable. I end up with like thread marks in my finger. But it is like, when it's posted like this, it is quite comfortable to write with. This specifically is a medium nib, and I seem to remember it working quite like okay. So I was pretty happy with it, except my grip. So it seems to be a recurring theme for me. This one is a Lamy Joy. So it's basically just a calligraphy safari. It just has a slightly different barrel design than the safari, and slightly cooler colors. It currently has a 1.9 stub nib on it. That's a bit too wide for me for everyday journal writing, and so it doesn't get inked really. It's also very long. Like most pens end about here, and so in several pen cases it doesn't have room generally. So I'm pretty happy with this pen, but to be honest, I'll just use my safaris and probably leave this. Yeah. This is my single Kaweco. It's a Kaweco student. I don't like the sport, like I don't like the aesthetic of the sport of Kaweco Sport. And I was looking for a front heavy pen, because I've had a front heavy pen in the past that worked really well with my handwriting. And this one has a metal grip section, which makes it weighted to the front. So that's exactly what I wanted. Except I then found out that I prefer to hold my pens slightly higher up, and I end up on the grip. No, on the on the part that screws into the cap. I just had a word for it. This is a medium nib, and I found it right. It wrote pretty well. No complaints there. I had a lot of brown ink in this. It was fun having a brown ink in a brown pen, and I really enjoyed it until I noticed that this is quite uncomfortable. I don't generally post my pens, so this is how I was writing with it, which is fine. Like, it's not too short or anything. I'm really comfortable with this size pen. I just wish it wasn't a screw cap pen. Thing is, I think screw cap pens are really cool. I like the idea of them, but then I end up with my fingers on on these on the part that screws on, and it's just really uncomfortable. So these two last ones are TWSBI Ecos, and they have the similar thing where they are screw cap pens, and I end up on the little lines. I've used them quite a lot. The other downside to these is that I like to try a lot of different inks, and I've ended up, instead of filling this full and having enough ink for several months, I prefer to just have the amount of ink that can be kept in this, like, so in the part where you can't screw the thing tighter. So I just fill this part with ink, and that's all I do. So it kind of defeats the point of having such a big ink reservoir when I don't want to use that much ink. I would prefer to have about as much ink as can go in a converter. That means that I change inks about once a month, which is perfect for me. I can get to try some new inks, and it's fun. I think both of they're quite difficult to see, but there are cracks in the see-through resin for at least the black one, I think. They're quite difficult to see, and they haven't caused any leakage or anything. But I have noticed that there are definitely cracks. And I can't see them right now. Oh yeah, there's a crack right here at the collar of where the nib and feed goes in. The nib and feed of these is just a friction fit, and so it's you can like push too hard and cause a little bit of cracking, but they're also like known for getting cracks eventually, which, I mean, they shouldn't get cracks. Like, this one has a crack in the cap where ink has got in. They shouldn't be cracking, but at the same time, the cracks aren't causing me any problems, haven't been. The main reason I am not inking these up is the grip section and my grip being too high. The nibs on these are spectacular. They're about, like, the smoothness of the nibs, these two I think are the best, kind of, like the TWSBI Eco and the Pilot Metropolitan. Pilot are known for their nibs, and TWSBI aren't far behind, to be honest. So yeah, these are my currently uninked pens, and I think I might try to get rid of some of these, because other people might get more enjoyment out of them than I do when I'm not using them. Lots of these have gotten lots of use. So the Metropolitan has gotten lots of use, the Student and the Ecos, they've all like been through the ringer. And you can see the wear on this Parker where it's been lying on surfaces. So yeah, it's not like I'm selling unused pens. It's just I've figured out that these aren't the best pens for me. So those are those, and then I've kept this one in its box because this one's pretty expensive and I'm not using it. So I gave it a good shot, and so I got to try this pen in the shop before I bought it. And I don't quite know why I went through with it after actually trying it. Because, for one thing, it's really heavy. And I was looking for a heavy pen. I was looking for a pen that would that was weighted to the front. And this is definitely weighted to the front. It has a pear wood body, I think. What does it say? Yeah, pear wood. And metal at the end, and the section as well. It has a medium nib that I find writes like a European medium, and I quite like it. In this exact pen, the section has a tendency to start unscrewing itself. But yeah, it has a good converter. There's nothing really wrong with it, except that the section is really, really short. So I end up here on the step down and on these, like the lines that connect the screw cap to the pen all the time. And it was just getting really uncomfortable. And I also figured out that this is a pen that's too heavy for me. I would get hand cramps and start like holding it really hard to control it. So apparently like the balance and stuff is really, really important. And what I should have realized while I was in the shop was that my grip was going to be too high for this pen. And I just didn't realize. I thought, oh, these metal lines are shallow enough that I won't feel it too much and it's fine. But it wasn't fine. I guess like I've learned my lesson, and I need to be aware of all the things that go into holding a pen and using a pen, and listen to the tiny voice that says, maybe not. The cap is really cool. The cap is really, really heavy. It's solid metal. I think it has, it has a plastic sleeve inside. And the clip is really solid. Like it has little crocodile teeth at the end here that like grips onto whatever you clip it onto. It has a spring inside. It's really quality cap, but yeah, this is not for me. And I think I will try to sell this to someone it might fit better, like someone with stronger, bigger hands or something. It has gotten a little bit of a dent, so I'll be honest about that when I try to sell it. I did really try to give this a try, like give this a run. I think I used it for half a year before I was like, no, this is really not working out. So I've kind of taken a pledge to myself to not use uncomfortable pens anymore and just focus on comfortable writing experiences. So yeah, we'll see if this is what someone would like, and if it is, that's wonderful. When I eventually get the energy to try to sell this, if you're interested, just comment and we could get in touch. And so that's all my fountain pens really. I've had some fountain pens earlier that I haven't kept that have started leaking and stuff, but yeah, I don't feel the need to keep those. So here's a little bit of a wild card. I use this for fountain pennings, so that's why I'm including it. It's a J. Herbin glass pen, and I use this to test new inks. It's really easy to clean between uses. You just dip it in water and dry it off on a paper towel and you're good. Slightly more difficult if you have a waterproof ink, but still works. It's really beautiful, and it's weird to hold. Like you have to find some way that works for you, but it's pretty smooth. Mine has a little bit of difference in how broad the line gets according to how you turn this pen. and the way you use it, like where the ink sort of sits in these grooves on the nib, means that if you want to get all the ink out, you need to turn it around. So sometimes it gets a little scratchy, and sometimes it writes like butter. And but yeah, I'm basically just using it to sample inks. This generally writes really wet, so the line you get from using this one doesn't really reflect the line you'll get when you put that ink in a fountain pen. Like, it's not the same, but it's an idea. It's good to get an idea. And it lives in this box between uses. I don't use it that often. I don't get new inks that often, so that's fine. It needs to be protected. It's glass after all. So yeah, that's it. Those are my fun pens. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions, let me know. Yeah, I use things that are not fountain pens on a daily basis as well. Like, my current favorite among them is this one, which is the Hi-Tech Point V5 RT from Pilot, which is a retractable needlepoint that's also a rollable. And it writes, the reason I like it is that it writes a bit like a fountain pen. Like, the ink behaves a little bit like a fountain pen, except it's not as delicate, and I can like abuse this one much more than I can abuse a fountain pen. And so it lives on my traveler's notebook. I just clip it to this and close up. So yeah, I use my fountain pens mainly for writing in my diary journal, and then I use this pen for the traveler's notebook, and that's about it. I do have some inks if you would like a tour of that as well. There aren't many, but I could make a video about that as well. Just let me know in the comments and I'll see what I can do. Okay, bye bye!